Okay, there we go. Yeah, so our quote from Pema Chodron, which is all anxiety, all dissatisfaction, all of the reason for our hoping our experience could be different, are rooted in our fear of death. A sign of health is that we don't become undone by this. We don't become undone by this. We take it as a message to stop struggling and be with it. Curiously enough, if we try to shield ourselves from discomfort, we suffer. When we don't close off and let our hearts break, we discover a kinship with all beings. And how I sort of interpret what she means by a kinship of all beings is sort of what we've been exploring here, which is around being in the realm of unity consciousness. So we'll play with this. We'll see if this is true for us. Welcome, everyone who's just arriving. Oh. Yeah, so week one was last week. For those of you who are here, for those of you who watched the video, I'm just going to do a little review. It was quite a journey. Um, we started off with the idea of the now being the key quote from Eckhart Tolle, right? And I talked about like, what is that? A lot of my life, like, what does that even mean? And as a child, this idea that I wanted to feel God, right? I wanted to feel God in my emotions in my body. And, how that sort of over these years turned into my intention to work with accessible, nourishing, pleasurable, and repeatable ways to enter the realms of the mystical. And that, my particular contemplation and what I'm sharing with you in this series is the doorway being two things that we all currently have in common is that we're, at the moment anyway, inhabiting a body. The moment we are inhabiting a body. And that's no small thing. And that one day we will no longer be inhabiting this body. Right? These are sort of the baseline two things that we have in common with each other. And why are these reliable portals and doorways to the infinite? Why is that? Because they are undeniable and they are vulnerable. And the closer we are to these two things, embodiment and death awareness, the more liberated we become. I don't know why fully. I didn't make the rules, but it works that way. And we talked about these three things that help us create the space, right? To drop in, to explore this and experiment with this together. We talked about setting aside this time, which is rare in our culture. We talked about getting into the body with gentle movements and contemplations to explore our unique process for tapping in to our intelligence. Because there's more wisdom in the body than all of the wisdom tradition texts and knowledge in the world, particularly coded to us, particularly coded to us. And then the third piece is integration, right? Where we did some movement, we did some journaling, dance, and art, and it anchors us. I'm seeing some people here showing up. Let me just take a minute to admit them. Okay, Anna, maybe you could keep an eye on that. And then we had our list of words that we really explored that we were to pick two of, which I'll show that list again, but it was play and pleasure and nourishment, curiosity, gentleness, desire, receptivity, presence, and spaciousness. And then we had our time on the mats where we played, we tracked sensations, we invited subtle movements, we were aware of the breath beneath the breath. We played with sound and smell and touch, following these threads. And we ended with the Andrea Gibson quote, Mortality is not small talk, but I wish it was. Yeah. So ideally, or maybe for a minute, you had the experience of sort of touching the quantum inside you. And I just want to open the floor a little bit here before sort of plunging into week two of like, did your own mystic come alive? Did your relationship with the body or with death shift at all in this process? Did your, right hemisphere show up differently? Did you feel your luminosity? So these questions are just to sort of prime the pump. You certainly can pick one or just, a moment to just hear where you're at, what's alive for you as things settled over the last week. You can unmute and share. Hmm. Mary, did you want to share? Or did you accidentally? Oh, he's still connecting. Anyone want to share a question or an
Yeah, I could share
experience?
something.
Sure.
Um, no, I just felt a little bit more. I did watch the recording, and after that, I was able to feel a little bit more expansion, a little bit more kind of patience and openness to the world. So that's about where I got to.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I had forgotten in the realm of pleasure how sweet it is to touch myself on my lower arms very, very, very slowly. And I remember the prompt about slowing it down further. And I know this, but I hadn't practiced it in a long time. So it's come back to me almost every day this week to just do that a little bit. That's good.
That sounds lovely. Mm, sounds lovely. Anyone else? Alyssa.
Um, yeah, I it was really profound for me when you said that's a contribution too, because I was dancing around and it felt kind of head down to body. And then I realized I just wanted to lay down, you know, and I was laying there for a while and then you had mentioned, maybe that's where you are and that's a contribution. Maybe you're feeling like you're not doing it right or something like that, and that's a contribution. So I started using that to explore a lot of things, and it really took me to some interesting places. So I've been saying that to myself all week, actually.
Yeah, it's interesting how much permission we need to show up as exactly where we are, right? So we have so many filters running of protecting, guiding, all of the things that, to show up in exactly how we are being, really to enter the moment. This, really in some ways requires a lot of permission. So thank you for sharing that. So any other shares? Well, this week is going to be much the same as last week. I'm going to give you, some thoughts to start with. We're going to work with some ideas along these ecstasy of impermanence lines. I will guide you. I will guide us all in movement, and then create a bridge time for art or journaling or dance for integration. And then we'll do some breakout rooms in the large group conversation. Um, I have nicknamed the weeks internally. Last week I called discovering the luminosity, right? To like really discover the divinity within. And this week I am calling alchemizing the shadow. And in an ideal world, we'd have a year together or 3 years together to dive deep into these teachings, these practices, these explorations, these conversations. But most of us, like, thanks to our culture, have developed the attention span of a gnat. And in this speeded up world, I had a hard time filling a 3 month long end of life class last year, let alone a 12 month or 36 month. So, we're accelerated. It is said we are accelerated in these times. So this is a very accelerated program for the depth that we are going to. So feel free to, unfold this over time. And some beautiful questions. I think Pamela might have raised this last week, but beautiful questions came up around, yeah, okay, it's great to get into the body, but what do I do with all the challenging stuff that's in there? What do I do with the pain? And this is what we're going to explore today. And I'm really, yeah, I'm excited to anchor us into the body, into coherence, and also to really explore these questions. So I want to repeat something that I said last week. It's just so chock full. I want to sort of slow it down a little bit and say that our conditioning is a pattern. Our vigilance is a pattern. Our stress is a pattern. Our lack attitude is a pattern, and pain is a pattern. That's not to dismiss or diminish any of these things. These are big deals in our lives. And the more we can allow emotions, sensations, experiences to run through us, be porous, the wave motion we explored last week, sort of like we were as children. All children are like this. They're fluid, right? Ouch, that hurt. I'm going to express that. Oh, that's joyful. I'm going to express that. This sort of like, beginner's mind kind of way of being. They're all of the motions of children. For those of you who have young children, especially in your lives right now, you know that like an emotion, it begins, it grows, it crests, it returns, it rests. And this happens over and over and over all day long. Yeah. And then we get socialized, which is what happens. There's nothing wrong with that. But the problem is in a culture that's not intact, we start stagnating and suppressing instead of finding more mature ways to move and flow. So it takes a lot of energy to hold back that which has been stagnating and suppressed, right? We know this. So as a general rule, the antidote to the pain and the challenges and the stress and the anger, any emotion that we encounter within ourselves, is to explore it while hanging out with different patterns, right? With the patterns of coherence, with the patterns of play, with the patterns of ecstasy. Because if we're rooted in those coherent patterns, then the pain parts or the disconnected parts, the isolated parts, they get sort of entrained, right? They get entrained to the coherence. The way I like to think of it, on an emotional level is the antidote to fear. The antidote to fear is gentleness. Right? How do we gentle? The antidote to pain is attention, loving, adoring, sensual, pleasurable attention. The antidote to stress is often space. Can we give it some space? Can we give ourselves some space? The antidote to grief is grieving, allowing. The antidote to anger, at least for me, is to be affirmed, to be met, to be welcomed, right? So the reason we get into the coherent space is because that's what we want to entrain to. That's what we want to train ourselves to. Because with that frequency, it's hard to maintain stagnation. So patterns that welcome and receive, that sort of are attuned to all that is, that helps rewire us. Pleasure rewires us. Curiosity unwinds us. One of my favorite teachers, Cass Phelps, who does embodiment work, says that coherence is the only thing that takes the entire circuitry and reshapes it. The fascia, the neurons, the mitochondria, the organ systems, the whole thing. Fascia is the coherence is the thing to entrain to. So if we spent 50 years in one pattern and we're able to move into this coherent space, we can jump timelines. We're at the quantum, meaning we don't have to take 50 years to unwind a pattern. It can happen quickly. Because when we allow our body into that space, the luminous space, it knows what to do. It knows what to do. Any questions about that? Finding our native rhythm. Finding our native rhythm is a reset.
Hey, Lee, I just wanted to understand that a little bit better because you said coherence is the only thing that can what? Everything? Unwind everything or?
Yeah, basically rewire.
Okay. And this might be a silly question, but I'm struggling with a applicable definition of coherence. Like, what does that practically mean for me?
Yeah, it's basically when the heart, body, mind, field all become synchronized,
Okay.
right? We've heard heart brain coherence. It's basically that experience when we lose ourselves in the moment. And that's what we're courting here. That's what we're doing here, is using the fact that we're embodied and the fact that we will someday not be, to play with this instrument that is ours by using some of these tools and techniques to court coherence, right? Slowing down the wave motion, subtle movements, using sound, tuning into these, using these tools that are accessible to nearly everyone to get into that state of the unified field, of the long tide, many, many names for it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So I'm going to put these words up again. Because these are not just, little fun tools. These are the actual mechanism. These are the qualities that we bring into our mat, into our body exploration. I think of these as the tools, the sword and the shield when we go dragon hunting. We're going to encounter some stuff. We're going to go into the body that's been a bit fraught, where we know some trauma lives, where we know some hard things lives. These are the sword and the shield. We haven't always experienced the body as a nourishing, safe, or life-giving place, but these are the paint and the paintbrush that we use. So again, really look at these words, roll them around in your heart for a minute. What ones are really alive for you? We picked 2 last week. You might try to play with those same 2. Or you might try a couple of different ones. You might try them all. You might try them all. I'm really, I think that throughout my life, there's been such a harshness that I return again and again to gentleness as a big medicine for me. Big, big medicine, for me personally, and receptivity. But feel into yours. Feel into yours. Okay, I'm going to stop share. You could always take a screenshot if you need to, or a picture. So again, Pamela's great question of like getting into the body, what do I do about the pain, and I'll just, pull from Joseph Campbell again, like I did last week, just so brilliant. Um, in the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. And another way to say this is the wound is the gift. The bigger the wound, the bigger the gift. Which is why we're working with the body and with death, which are, somewhat challenging places to enter. And let's talk about alchemy a little bit. I love the metaphor of alchemy and, who were the alchemists? They were the mystics or scientists or healers or seekers. We think of them as philosophers, chemists, magician who lived across many cultures, right? Egypt and Greece, all over Islam, from Europe, all through antiquity to the Renaissance. And, they're well known for this idea of turning a base metal like lead or mercury, something useless or maybe even dangerous, into this shimmering substance that is gold, right? Of endless worth, the elixir of life, the fountain of youth, the holy grail. Who are these alchemists? This is a metaphor. Alchemy is a metaphor, right, for inner transformation, for transmuting matter into spirit and spirit into matter, the work of the sacred marriage. And so basically, it's this question of how do we take this ego-ridden, pain body, shadowy self that I am and become divinity? How do we take this and become divinity? The real laboratory was the temple or the monastery where people would practice this day in and day out and day in and day out for their whole entire lives, right? Right now it's the Zoom room where we're playing and practicing. But honestly, the real laboratory is this existence, is this I amness, this body. We have, for the moment, some space and time to experiment with this incarnation. That is so incredible. Our bodies and the fact that we die is the alchemical chamber, because we're all looking for the radiant self, every one of us, no matter what the longing is, it's the radiant self that we're longing for, to become the light, to become the source. So how do we take this nigredo, this dark, shadowy matter, and we in the darkest depths of us, and how do we purify it, awaken it, integrate it, and then embody it, right? This philosopher's stone is just so embodies the idea of alchemy. It's like a legendary tool or a mythic alchemical substance that was believed to turn lead into gold. And people actually look for it like it's a thing outside of ourselves, right? Like it's a thing that exists. But it's these practices, it's this awareness, it's this willingness to be in our incarnation. As scary and terrifying as that sometimes is, in the liminal now, in the quantum. Because in the unified field, we are immortal. It's like we hold the key to immortality by being in our own wound. It's so counterintuitive. It's the thing we want to run the furthest from. So how do we do this? In an ideal world, we spend our whole lives practicing. From a young age, we befriend our bodies, we experience pleasure and play, creativity, nourishment, healing. We play with others. We're tutored and initiated into death as a gift. We have sacred portals. We practice all the time. We just we get, we get it. We can go to those places at higher and higher levels. But here we are, modern, traumatized, separated, disembodied, disconnected people. We're going to just have to work with what we are and what we have, right? We start where we are. We have the tools we have. We have each other. We have curiosity. We have play. And if you watched the video, an email that I sent, and I'll just summarize it here if you didn't, there's safety and then there's coherence is how I look at it. These are like what I talked about as the regulating the nervous system through a tantric lens, right? And at a very baseline, we need to start feeling safe in life and in our bodies in order to heal, right? There's no detox, there's no repair, there's no digestion if we're feeling in fight or flight. Safety is a biological requirement for thriving. So we learn, we learn to get some nourishing touch. We learn to allow our emotions. We learn to follow our impulses. We learn about relational safety and community. We start to have an awareness of the body. We do things that are grounding. This helps us sort of track our soma and our body presence. These are like playing the scales. We learn to receive from life. We're all in process of that. And then what I laid out in the video is that there's these actual beautiful, really simple practices that help us move into coherence. And we've been playing with them. The micro movements, the turning inward, the subtle body, delighting in sensation, slowing down, desire and pleasure as doorways, sound and vibration. So that's what we're doing. We're here to get a real-time experience, because when we enter the body and find those beautiful places, and then we can also be in vulnerability by choice, what we can touch is pretty profound. And what we discover is, as Rumi said, the cure for the pain is in the pain. The cure for the pain is in the pain. Or as the Buddhists say, what's in the way is the way. What's in the way is the way. Yeah. So as we go in tonight, again, I'm going to guide you every step of the way. I've got the music thing figured out. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, whoever else helped last week, Jennifer, running it through Zoom. Although we will see. It's always a challenge, but we will see. Well, I will guide us. We'll get on our mats. I will guide us. And then, when we really can fully be in our luminosity, then we'll take a small piece of something that's hard in our lives. And I love these concepts and words from the Somatic Experiencing body of work by Peter Levine. And there's 2 words, and I'm going to explain what they are because they're complex words. One is called pendulation and one is called titration. Anybody familiar with pendulation, titration when it comes to body somatics? Awesome. So pendulation is this moving between a state of comfort, ease, neutrality, or even delight, and then touching into a place that's ouchy, touching into a place or an emotion or a sensation that's been a pattern that's been hard to be with, and going sort of back and forth, right? It helps the nervous system release stuck energy without overwhelming it. Sort of builds trust as we return to safety and then touch a little bit and return to safety. That's called pendulation. And titration is doing that in small chunks. So if I have a big, big trauma in my life that I want to deal with, I'm not going to jump off the cliff and into it. I'm going to take small, manageable amounts of sensation, memory, or emotion, and then feel it while I also do these practices, these coherence practices, so I don't flood my system. It's just how to be wise with ourselves. Any questions before we get on our mats and drop into the body? Any questions? Any comments? Any conversation? Got dark in here all of a sudden. I love seeing all your faces. Okay. Well, let's move to our mats and I will guide from here. Let me see what I can do about this sound situation. Oops, stop share. Okay, advanced. Area. Okay. So Anna, just let me know if you can both hear my voice and hear the music.
Yes,
All
we
right.
got it.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. All right, so yay, we did it. Okay, so just beginning to drop into the body. Whether you're on your back, on your side, on all fours. Turning down distractions, putting aside some time to really just be. In a position that feels supportive. Noticing where the body is touching the floor, the mat. Just noticing. Not changing, just noticing breath. And this is where we begin to initiate patterns that don't control the body, that let the body find its yum. Circling the ankles and wrists, undulating the spine, stretching the limbs. Moving in any way that gets you engaged. Opening and closing the mouth. Putting a hand on the soft skin. Somewhere on the body, either rubbing lightly or firmly. This is our temple of practice. The mystery school you were born into. And whatever you're doing, can you slow it down? Or if the tools of play are asking you to speed it up, then speed it up. Play, pleasure, nourishment, curiosity, gentleness, desire, receptivity, presence, and spaciousness. And I want to add one that I love, which is savoring. Can you waver, that undulation? Could it last all night? Can you begin to notice what part of that stretch feels delicious? Is there a twist or a flow that feels particularly curious? Is it calling you? Can you explore it even more? Can you bring in some sound? A wind sound. Wow. Cave breath. Making an S sound with the mouth or the lips. Seeing how the body responds. Sound alone can induce mystical states. They're ancient, ancient regulatory tools. The underwater orchestra that is our cells, our blood, our organs. They're humming, they're toning, they're moaning, they're chanting. They love responding to sounds. Oh, sounds. Oh, oh. Ah. Ga 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 ko ko ah, wah. See if you can get curious about what the body wants to do next. Wow, 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 wow. Ah. As I mentioned last week, all of these prompts are suggestions. If you've got something going on that is capturing your attention, that's the right thing for you. Feel free to ignore or adjust these prompts in whatever way works for your play, your pleasure, your spaciousness, your presence. And as Alyssa reminded us, however you're showing up here. huge contribution to us all. Some of us may be exploring or tracking stillness. There's so much dynamism in stillness. There's so much flow in stillness. What is the desire of your body? What is it longing for? When given the space and attention. The body loves a wave pattern. Circles and spirals and waves and undulations. This is the language of the body. Follow your sensations, impulses, like ripples. Become the primordial jellyfish that you once were. Or maybe you have claws and teeth, scales and fins, paws and a tail. Codes for all of life. Yes. Oh. Delighting in your sensuality, feeling the texture of something you can delight in. Sensuality reclaims the body from numbness. Letting movement and sensuality and delight begin to melt the scaffolding of conditioning. Releasing any expectation of how the movements should look or feel, trusting the wisdom of the body. Becoming a witness and a receiver to your own flow, to your own flow. Oh. Ah. Ah. The poet Rupi Kaur, says, I will never have this version of me again. Let me slow down and be with her. I will never have this version of me again. Let me slow down and be with her. We are entering a rhythm more native to our biology and culture. Our micro movements and micro attunements, somatic listening carry impact, more impact than force and control. Where curiosity is the currency. Where natural unfolding is the pathway. These are the tempos of the quantum and imaginal realms. The nervous system softens, perception becomes porous. It is in these places that our presence becomes a prayer. And following our desire are the breadcrumbs to the ecstatic realms. I want you to keep staying in your flow, and I'm also going to introduce you to the midline, a place in us that is often called the center pole or the axis mundi or the shushumna, the tree of life and the central channel. We're going to do a little journey to this place and keep using your qualities and your movements. Keep tuning in and deepening into your own experience. The midline is the luminous, quiet, dynamically still core of us that existed before we did. Before we were formed and the egg was fertilized and there was a spark of life. There was some cell division, sort of disorganized. And right around day 14, a vibration appeared, a field It's called in embryology, it's called the embryonic plate, or the primitive streak. It's a vibrational field where the midline emerged. And once it started to appear, this sort of pulsing vibration, it became the organizing axis for everything that followed. Every cell suddenly knew its place. And the midline remains uncorruptible, carrying the blueprint of our essence. Charles Ridley describes it as a coherent bioelectric field around which everything is organized. And it's a field of stillness. It never leaves us. And it's pulsing, dynamic intelligence. And while it was forming our bodies, it had beautiful tasks. But once that task is complete, it still conveys coherent instructions for all of life, for our lives. The maintenance, the healing, the immunity, the development, the ongoing unfolding of our own soul. And see if you can sense this line of stillness running through your center. It's this beautiful crystalline salt water in the middle of the spine, the cerebral spinal fluid, cascading. It's our internal tide. It carries our pulse. Before we existed, through our existence, and beyond our existence. It's our inner sea. It's salt water. If you can weave this knowing into your movement, allowing this pulse to become apparent. The song that is your essence. Letting the breath of life, imagining this is where your lungs are in this axis, or in the pelvic bowl, allowing the primordial breath to take you, non-linear breath. Can you be a creature in the ocean, the vast ocean that is your central channel? And weaving the awareness of the midline into these micro movements, these subtle movements, these soundings. Wow. And in this space, we can practice encountering a part of us that is patterned into a pain pattern or a separation pattern or an emotional pattern, anchoring into our coherent state, into our synchronization, into our softness, into our vulnerability. See if we can dance with that pattern. How much softness, gentleness, and presence and play can we bring? This part of us just needs our attention, our awareness. It's longing to pattern to our the codes, blueprint. Using the wave patterns, the undulations, the sounds, the light to dance with these places. How do these places want to move and express? This place feels safe enough to unfold while we witness. While we delight in its existence. Allowing the body to reorganize around pleasure. favoring. Many of us didn't know how to access these tools of delight. Us sourcing ourselves, our own eternal awareness. And it's tender, incarnating, it can be disorienting and painful and scary. But what if that could be okay too? What if sourcing from our own divinity, we're able to be welcoming all of that? Mm. Mm. My favorite modern mystic, Richard Rudd, he says, as a human being, your primary purpose is to fill your body with your own consciousness. Your deepest purpose is simply to be. Your purpose represents the essence of your humanity. And your beautiful ordinariness. And your love of being alive inside of a physical body on a physical plane. Oh. Bringing in new tools. How curious can you be about what's emerging right now? How much can you see this moment as a contribution to the whole? As a universe. Ah. We're going to move soon into a space where you can stay where you are, continue to explore these subtle micro movements or stillness or whatever it is that you're exploring. Stay right where you are. Or you can move some art or a journal or some dance. The intention of integration. And I'll put on some different music. You won't be hearing my voice for some time, maybe about 15 minutes or so. And you can feel free to listen to the music I've curated for you, or turn it down, or play your own. Oh. And as we transition, for those who wish to transition, I will just leave you with this quote from Meister Eckhart. And he says, "It is a lie, any talk of God that does not comfort you. It is a lie, any talk of God that does not comfort you."
Sitting in a field, green, purple, yellow, with my friend, black and white shadow. We watch the dance of the sparrow, shooting through the sky like an arrow. Like an arrow. As the clouds are turning their own, I hear the wind starting to blow, and I sit still and watch it flow, just like a pharaoh. Like a pharaoh. I sit still and watch it flow. As I sit still and watch it flow. As I sit still and watch it flow. As I sit still and watch it flow. I 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 sit still and watch it flow. I sit still and I watch it flow. I sit still and watch it flow. I sit still.
So long, long time ago, we were the force of sea and stone. How far did you dance over the earth the first time you left? Inside, wing to the ground. Where was the course and where was the sound? Sailor, where did you go? Over the valley, and when did you know? Way down, down to the ground. We were the earth, the soil, and the sand. No need to wait for me. Give this body to the Hollywood sea. Give, take away. What you give, take away. What you give, what you give. What you give, you give, you give, you take away. What you give, what you give away. What you give, you give, you give, you take away. What you give, what you give, what you give.
Coming back. Slowly re-entering the world of technology. Hmm. Beautiful, brilliant, awesome. Thank you for your journeys, all of you. It so feeds the field. The field is going to be the topic next week. Really dissolve into the field together. Yeah, I'm just feeling the journeys that so many of you have taken, that I took. Such a playground, so grateful. We're going to do some breakout rooms, about 3 people each. It's just a way to transition in a smaller group, to have everyone have a chance to share if they want to. Um, probably about 25 minutes. So you'll have about 8 minutes each, roughly. We'll send a broadcast out when we've gone through a third and then a callback. And I certainly can give you a prompt, but this is so rich. Where you have been is so rich. And the most basic prompt is, what's unfolding in you, right? What's unfolding? I did pull together a prompt that I can put in the chat. And it's, can I receive the brilliance of myself? Can I receive the brilliance of myself, of this moment and all that's here? Can I receive the brilliance of myself? Can I receive the brilliance of myself, this moment and all that's here? And it may come to your turn in the sharing and you may not want to share. You may want to just sit in meditation or sit in silence, and that's perfectly acceptable. Then just 3 of you will be together in that space. That can be beautiful as well. And share whatever from the heart, from the body. Any questions before we drop in smaller groups? If you're alone there, hang out, and we can see the sort of list and we can move you if you're alone. So just hang out there and we'll take care of you. Okay, see you on the other side, and then we'll have some time to debrief together.
Help me, Jesus.
Alyssa, your doggy wants some attention. Bye, Jennifer. What's alive for people?
I feel alive with just this general contentment of things moving along as they are. We were talking in the breakout room. I was saying something about, how ecstatic life becomes when I am aware that every moment is dying. Like each moment is like this a death. Every second is this like disappearance and opening to another one. And I think there was a time for sure, like a long time, when I just felt like the whole world revolved around me, that existence was all my creation, or you know what I mean? Like a child does, when we're first in this world, we just think that everything is us. And just coming into understanding of that this is a momentary flash, just like a mushroom coming up from the mycelial, like I'm just a fruiting body here in the rain for just a moment, and then I melt back in again. And that every moment is like that. It is kind of sweet and ecstatic.
I love that. I'm a fruiting body. Of the whole intelligent complex, the mycelial network. That's great. I really, really, that was a gift to me. Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, this idea that the body doesn't know how to die, somehow that it's like not dying every moment, right? Like that it's not dying with every out breath, that it's not dying with every cell death, that it's not dying constantly, you know. What else? Who else wants to share? We've got some spacious time together, so did anyone play with um, working with a contracted part, a pain part, or a emotional part in that space? Might want to share. Sharing is helpful in this way. I will say it's helpful in this way. We don't have a playground like this. This is not a playground we have a lot of access to. So much of what we learn is to hide, right, from ourselves, from others, and when we have a playground, it's really nice to feel like if we were all in the same space, we could, and we can here as well. The field is very alive. I feel you all so vibrantly, actually. We can feel each other's contribution to the process. But because we have so few spaces to explore existence in this way, it's actually really helpful to hear verbally. We can feel it sort of non-verbally. If we're sensitive enough, we can tune in. But it's also really nice to hear verbally what goes on for others, because if we were in a mystery school for 3 years together, or say we came up in a mystery school as young people or young adults, part of our mystery school would be debriefing and unpacking and like, how does this live for you? And how did I'm stuck on this? And what does that land? And what does this mean? It would be part of our process. And it's possible that we're just, I know that for me, sometimes after those mystical experiences, I don't really want to talk. So that may be also true. Talking is a different part of the brain, it's a different hemisphere, but in a way, it helps us bridge, right? When we can use the different hemispheres, it helps us ground our experience.
Something to share. We were talking about some words, and one of them was the word vulnerable, or vulnerability. And I'd written that down in my journaling, and then I noticed that in the word vulnerability, there's also the word ability. And then I started wondering about, is vulnerability an active or a passive thing, or both? And then we got into looking at, like, what is the opposite of vulnerability? And some of the answers we came up with were being wishy-washy, being guarded, afraid, sarcastic, angry, possibility of being wrong. And it just, I guess vulnerability is something that you need to let yourself do.
Mhm.
But I don't know, there's that whole, like, ability part of it that kind of, as soon as I thought of that, it just, like, stressed me out. Ability and vulnerability, there's just weird synchronization there.
Hmm. Yeah, I wonder what the etymology and origin of that word is. A really good one to look up.
Mhm.
I love that you were playing with that. I mean, I'd love to hear from others. Brene Brown has some of the best work on vulnerability out there. Her research and, from a sort of, she sort of blends hard sciences and soft sciences, probably, but, like vulnerability is the doorway to our power, our strength, our, like, I guess how I would respond to that in the moment is, I think that the opposite of vulnerability is when we're guarded, protected, braced, right, against life, right, against death, against difficult things, right. And it's certainly true when we don't have choice, when we're in a situation where we don't have choice and we feel vulnerable, that is very difficult. We can often feel victimized. We can often, that is a very difficult situation. But if we can more and more choose, if we have the choice to be vulnerable, because the real truth is we have no control over anything, right? That's the real truth. We have very little control. We're not in charge in many ways. Incarnation is inherently deeply vulnerable. Can we live into that truth, and in that truth discover worlds of learning, really? The Yeah, I'll stop there. Does anybody else have thoughts about vulnerability they want to share? Dave, please.
It seems the opposite of being vulnerable is like kind of getting in your own way. Like while we were on the mat, I was trying to make a sound from my belly. And when I tried to do it, something would get in my way and my belly would tense up and I couldn't do it. And I was probably thinking I wasn't safe. I'm going to look like a fool to the flies on my counter or whatever. But it's just our whole culture makes us not feel safe. So I kind of lost my train of thought. Yeah.
Well, sharing that was vulnerable, and what it did for me is it really opened my heart, softened my belly, hearing you say that, like, and noticing the piece in me of my own shame relating to what you're saying and how it lives in me of hiding and contraction and holding back and not being safe and those places in me. So your vulnerability was a gift to me in that moment.
I remember something else. I go to an acupuncturist, and he said to me, because he was talking about that I don't feel safe. And he said, most people in the United States do not feel safe most of the time. And that just was very helpful to me, realizing I'm not alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, we've made a bit of a mess of our culture, haven't we? Yeah, thank you. Larry.
So I um, came into this wanting to get a sense of a time relationship new to me. And so tonight I chose out of your list of words, pleasure and presence. Um, and I'm so much anticipating meeting a woman who's coming to visit me for a few days to be with me and to be an experiment with me in possibly being in a long-term relationship. We've been discussing pretty much daily now, but online for weeks. And I noticed myself being anxious at the beginning of this Zoom that I was not present here. And um, um, I hadn't even thought about vulnerability in this way, and until just the last few minutes, and y'all have been you and Dave were talking about that, and I realize now that the choice that my friend and I have made is to be vulnerable with one another. Um, and and to explore whether or not we want to be companions in a long-term relationship. Um, and so I'm noticing myself being very present and listening and interested about what we're doing here, and excited in this journey, in the process.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, long-term relationship requires a significant amount of vulnerability, right? Because we bump up against deep wounded places in ourselves and each other. That's the nature. That's how they're designed. They're designed to unearth all of the unhealed attachment stuff. And if we move into that without vulnerability, we have almost no hope, really, honestly. And learning to be vulnerable in those deepest of places is what brings us closer to ourselves and to others. And it's some of the scariest stuff we'll ever do. And yeah, I mean, this work is very tantric. Mostly people in the West experience Tantra or know of Tantra as a path of sacred sexuality, and it is very much that as well. path of sacred sexuality and erotic awareness, right? All of these practices we're doing is about eroticism, right? How do we infuse our life with the erotic life force energy, the creative wave, non-linear way of being in the world, what is in Tantra called Shakti, life force or prana? Can we create a path for ourselves to eroticize all aspects of our existence, including our grief, including our pain, including our struggles, including, yeah, all of it. We have access to the imaginative, nonlinear world. And so, when I tell people I teach death and tantra, they think, oh, these are very different things, and they are not. They originate from the same seed. Life and death are lovers. Death is a lover to us. Pain is a lover to us. And the more we can realize that life and death, light and dark, day and night are in constant lovemaking, constant lovemaking in us, through us, as us. This is where we get to, touch the ecstatic, right? Psychedelics does it in its own way. Mystical Christianity does it in its own way, right? Indigenous or animist traditions do it in their own way. The quantum field does it in its way. The body movement dance community does it in this way. There's many paths to this divinity. And, I'm using a tantric lens and pulling from different traditions because the synthesis of it is helpful to how we each orient differently. Other thoughts about vulnerability, about death, about eroticism?
I just wanted to add that, Lee, that was very helpful, and everyone's contribution here was just really helpful in helping gel some of my connecting some of my experiences this evening together. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, we do. We contribute to each other so much in our process, like the great poet Rilke, who said, be patient towards all that is unsolved in your heart. Be patient towards all that is unsolved in your heart and try to love the questions themselves. Try to love the questions themselves. Rilke, maybe more than any other poet in my experience, is just like, was so tapped into this quantum unified field, still point, whatever, eternal now. His words, for me, they just take me there, and that phrase, be patient towards all that is unsolved in your heart, love the questions themselves, like it just brings me right into that essence of curiosity. Yeah. Can we live into the questions? That is vulnerable. That is the vulnerable path. Can we not know, right? Another one of Richard Rudd's saying is wisdom is rooted in not knowing. Wisdom is rooted in not knowing. When we don't know, we have access to all. We don't know. All wisdom is rooted in not knowing. Knowledge is different. Knowledge is wonderful. Wisdom doesn't know. Wisdom emerges. What else? Any other thoughts? Our last minutes together. Pamela. You're muted, love.
Okay. Yeah, I found this a very frustrating experience. And it's, I guess I would say, uh, prefigured by my experience over past years, um, in which I have essentially tried to use various somatic meditative techniques. And I essentially feel sort of shut out of my body, despite persistence over a number of years. And I guess the main impetus that started me on this was a spiritual path, which I continue to follow, which was one that was um, introduced by a spiritual healer in Germany in the 1950s named Bruno Gröning, who had, massive crowds, like tens of thousands of people who would come, and many people would receive healings, and these were documented medically and so on. And there's still organizations today that promote this path, which involves the taking in of this energy. And so I can feel that energy. I felt it very distinctly the first time I came in contact with it. But one of the things that Bruno Gröning said was, um, take in this energy and then pay attention to your body. That's the entire thing, is pay attention to your body. He also said all this other stuff that is completely compatible with what you're saying, which is you don't take external sources of knowledge. You don't buy into culture. No, you check in with yourself. And I will say that, I can feel that energy, and I can also feel like negative frames of mind and so on dissolve in when the energy comes in, I receive like forgiveness, or problems seem to melt away and so on. But I've really never understood what he meant about observing your body and what it is that you would be observing. I mean, I raised the question last week about pain, and I sort of see how, curiosity and presence and so on addressed to a painful part or a painful sensation could be liberating and conducive to change. But I'm just wondering if you have anything you'd like to say or could say in response to what I've just shared.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, just feeling you and the vulnerability of that share as well. Just like, next week we're going to talk about the field, and Pamela, you may actually be able to, you may have honed your skill more to the field than internal. And as we are vulnerable with each other, like the field actually for me becomes like so tangible. Like I just like, boom, I just feel us all here. And um incarnating doesn't happen just by virtue of us sort of coming through the birth canal, or however we get here, cesarean or birth canal. It takes us a very long time to get here, and depending on our lineage trauma, depending on the patterns of disconnection from the body, some of us um, are very distant from our own embodiment. And when I feel that about myself and about others, like I have a lot of grief, because as Dave was saying, as others were saying, like it hasn't been a safe place to be. It hasn't. been a safe place to be. Modernity, industrialization, decades and lineages of trauma, capitalism, the list goes on and on. We are at a sort of low point in our sort of ability to be here in any modicum of safety and pleasure. So it's a journey, what I recommend starting with a book, a very small book by Peter Levine called Healing Trauma. Peter Levine has a lot of books out there. Go into his methodology of somatic experiencing, but this is a very simple book with chapters. And like the first chapter, if I recall, is like a very simple exercise of tapping on the back of the hand and saying, "This is my hand. It belongs to me." And it's these stepping stones and these breadcrumbs into the journey of embodiment. That's not everybody's journey. But if that is, you're here, you're asking these questions, you're curious. I hear the process has been frustrating. And it may be important to just start slower. This is a bit of an advanced practice in that we're jumping into sort of a movement process that is requiring a level of some level of relationship to enjoying being in here. And that's not true for a lot of us. That's not true. So starting slow, going, and then knowing along the way that forming this relationship to the body is also going to sort of bring up probably hard stuff. And the journey is, I started with that book probably in 2005. And I was probably in a similar space to what you're saying, which is like, what does this even mean, be in the body? I don't even know what this means.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And as you were saying that, as you were describing the book, I felt like crying.
Yeah.
So that I take that to be a response
Yeah.
to what you're saying.
Yeah. It's
Thank
very
you.
gentle. It's very simple. Peter Levine is one of our brilliant, somatic geniuses in the world, which is so interesting. If you've ever met Peter Levine, he's, we teach what we need to learn, like just getting in the body, it's, yeah, brilliant work. So I would start there.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I started with a Pema Chodron quote, and I will end with one, and then I will stay on if anyone wants to talk more. And I don't think I have this on the screen. Sorry, I said I was going to show them, but I am putting them in the drive cart back end. You'll be able to get all these quotes. This is from her book, How We Live is How We Die. Habituating ourselves a little every day to the basic groundlessness of life will pay large dividends at the end of life. Somehow, despite its ongoing presence in our lives, we are still not used to continual change. The uncertainty that accompanies every day and every moment is an unfamiliar presence. As we contemplate these teachings and pay attention to the unpredictable flow of our experience, we just might start to feel more relaxed with how things are. If we can bring this relaxation to our deathbed, we will be ready for whatever may happen next. And I would add, to her work is that by bringing in the eroticism that we've been playing with, that change, the continual nature of change can actually be a dance partner, can really work with that ever unfolding moment. Well, 9:30, thank you for this journey. Just so delighted to be with you all in this playground, and I will stay and hang out and chat, but if you need to leave, Blessings, and see you next week, or our last week.
Thank you, Lee.
Hi, Cricket. Hi, Larry. Hi, Caroline. Anybody have anything else to share? Caroline, you've been quiet. I've been missing hearing from you.
Hi. I did actually put a little question in the chat,
Oh, look at that. I'm just seeing it now.
which you actually answered in what you described earlier about the ecstatic movement. And so it really helped me, because I think what I'm struggling with is I know how to meditate, but I don't know how to do what it is we're doing. And so it looks and feels to me like meditation, because that's what I know how to do.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
great.
I was wondering, so I feel like that if there's more to add to the question, the answer to the question, and you'd like to share, that would be lovely. But then I was kind of hoping you could speak to the actual experiential difference, because what's happened to me when I was on the floor when you were doing the meditation, well, see, I even used that word, when you were doing the guided imagery, I can't even talk, the guiding, I was more in a meditative state than I was apparently an ecstatic state, even though I feel like I get to the same place.
They sort of do, don't they? I mean, I'm not a meditation expert. So, I mean, I've done a 10-day Vipassana sit and I've studied with Shambhala. I've done some meditation techniques, and I would say they're really great at bringing focus, right? Like if their list of words were up there, it would be like focus, clarity. It's on the spectrum of yang to yin, it's much more yang, right? It's like, I'm gonna like let these things move through me. I'm not gonna give in to them. I'm gonna like really be with my breath. I mean, brilliant. People move to the acidic states of awareness and expansion and all kinds of bliss states with meditation. This is a much more, I would say, yin process, in that it's tapping into it's the sort of, in some ways, like the opposite spectrum than meditation, which is like, can we let our every desire, meditation is saying don't pay attention to your desires, this process is saying, can we let every desire of the body be holy, and like take it and relate to it, move with it, eroticize it, and be in that process of focus. There's still focus. It's just, can I let this sort of life force take over? It's like it's almost like polar opposite experiences. But there's still focus and there's still lots of dynamism. And I find, for me, I find so much more freedom in the ability to allow my body to do what it wants to do. And I think, bringing a stillness or a meditation practice to this is a curious thing, as long as it's not frustrating. I mean, Pamela was talking about like, I feel frustrated. If meditation is taking you there, like, that's awesome.
Thank you very much. That was very helpful.
Maybe you could bring that up next week, and maybe it would be helpful for others. Oh my goodness, look at that kitty. Oh my goodness. That little face. Like it popped out of nowhere and then it disappeared.
We just got photobombed.
You totally got photobombed. Yeah, so tell me how that answer was helpful to you.
First of all, you put it on a spectrum. Second of all, I have experiences that are ecstatic, but I don't have them in this bucket. And so there's a lot of compartmentalization. And what I see when there's a spectrum is that it's not compartmentalized. So the flow of, it's all about the energy, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about. That's what we're interacting with. And it's about transformative and transcendentalness of that energy. And so when it's on a spectrum, it can move freely. And I totally get what you're saying about on the ecstatic side of the spectrum, the free movement versus the meditative side of the spectrum, where it's more like an empty vessel and stuff is flowing through.
Yeah,
It's
I
same
think,
energy.
yeah, I think yang and yin are really the
Yes.
best approaches to talk about that. And I do think, you know, more yang oriented people tend to be like, oh, what's going on here? You know?
So right now, what is fascinating to me relative to this class, which I am so excited about and really enjoying, is that I'm reading a book called Tantric Psychophysics. And I don't know if you've heard of it or not, but if you haven't, it might be of interest, because the woman who wrote it has been studying this stuff as you have for quite a while. And she's pulling from all these different schools, and she's electrical engineer by training. So when she
Wow.
pulls it all together, she's doing both the mystical aspect of it, but how it translates with the science, and then how the actual processes work. So a whole lot of what you're talking about, I just finished reading about. And so it's really starting to gel in terms of understanding mentally what we're doing and how it is, but the physicalness of it is practice, and I'm not practiced yet. So I have a long way to go, but I'm starting to really get where I'm trying, what I'm trying to open up to.
Yeah, I love that. That's really cool about like how the concepts that she's expressing, you're actually in the playground here, you know, sort
Doing
of
it,
like
yes.
alchemizing some of that.
And she talks about the yin and the yang specifically in the same exact context that you just did.
Mm-hmm.
And the woman who spoke earlier about the fella she studied with in Germany, he's one of the main people relative to the book, because it's the same energy. It's just in different schools of thought, how they work through, how they interact with it and become open to it.
I think that would be a great comment, you know, if you care to share next week about the book. I would love that. And maybe we can just bring our conversation up a little bit.
I will try. I get shy when there's so many people, but I will do it.
Would it be okay if I brought up our conversation and introduced
Sure.
it? Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Great.
Yeah. I want to be vulnerable. I just have a lot of stuff around that.
Well, it may not be the vulnerability you're choosing right now. You're choosing different kinds of vulnerability. That's the thing about choice, you know. There's a never-ending plethora of opportunities to be vulnerable, you know, in any moment, and some may be too far of a reach for us. So,
Well, I am perfectly capable of doing it. I want to do it, and you have asked, and so I will.
okay, great.
Thank you. I'm going
You're
to sign
welcome.
off, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Yeah, you bet, honey.
Take
Take
good
care.
care.
Bye.
Bye.